Hello, Logan. How is this possible? As I told you a long time ago, you're not the only one with gifts.
Hello and welcome to Keepin the Comic, the show that asks the question, are you even superheroing, bro, if your favorite character doesn't die only to surprisingly come back later? The X-Men 97 series keeps telling us that Professor X is dead, but let's be real, he's died before. So today, let's take a walk down memory lane to highlight the top 10 times the X-Men's version of Mr. Clean has died only to find himself back on the side of living again. And who knows, maybe one of these will pop up in the animated series. Now, the first one is titled Brood Queen. In issue number 167 of Uncanny X-Men, written by Chris Claremont, we witness the X-Men engage in a protracted battle in space with the alien parasite Brood Queen. Yep, that is one scary-ass looking insect. Now, this is followed by the hurried return of the X-Men to Earth. After Brood Queen's failed attempt to manipulate the bodies of the X-Men as hosts for her brood embryos, she set sights on Professor X. Now, by the time the X-Men reached their home, let's just say that things were a little bit too late. The team shatters down the doors to get to their mentor, only to find the insect-like form of a young queen erupting out of his body. Ew. The caption states, Charles Xavier is no more. But hey, let's be real, this is Professor X that we're talking about, right? Once again, this man is back in the game, this time with the help of the robot medic Sikorsky of the Starjammers. The tissue samples that were taken earlier were then used to produce a clone body into which the mind of the powerful telepath Professor X could safely be transplanted. Now, it's safe to say that his mind has returned. This next one is called the Fenris Twins. Now, Magneto is undoubtedly the sworn enemy of both Charles Xavier and the X-Men. Although, of course, I guess Charles and Eric have always been more like frenemies anyways. Either way, let's move on. In the Uncanny X-Men issue number 200, once again written by Chris Claremont, but he teamed up this time with John Romita, Magneto gets tried in world court for many of his previous crimes. Now, Professor X and Gabrielle Haller represent him in his defense, and during the trial, the Fenris twins mount an attack to finish off Magneto. During the battle, Xavier's weakened clone body begins to collapse. Professor X asks Magneto to continue his mission and to look after his X-Men. Little did everyone know that the Starjammers were monitoring Xavier's vitals and rushed back to Earth for rescue. And it was then confirmed in the next issue that Professor X was saved. And now in this next one, in the Ultimate X-Men 78, written by Robert Kirkman, Professor X, Bishop, and the rest of the X-Men find themselves in Finland, of all places, where they battle Cable and his team of mercenary mutants. As Professor X and Cable face off with each other, Cable pulls out a detonator. Cheater. He presses down on the detonator and gives rise to a massive explosion. After the smoke cleared, the X-Men comb through the rubble only to find a fleshless and charred skeleton of the remains of Professor Charles Xavier. Yikes! And then at the end of issue 2 of the alternate universe story and Ultimatum, written by Jeff Loeb and drawn by David Finch, Magneto grabs Xavier by the head only to twist and snap his neck, which is just savage. Professor X is then seen lying in a pool of blood. And this one here is where Wolverine pops his claw. So in Uncanny X-Men issue number 275, written once again by Chris Claremont and drawn this time by Jim Lee, the X-Men were reunited with Professor X, who was spending time with his love, Empress Lilandra, and also the Starjammers. Now, Lilandra's sister, Deathbird, was making a play for Lilandra's throne, trifling, and she was using X-Men to do her bidding. Though things seemed happy initially, no one was aware that Wolverine had an agenda. When he stumbles upon the right chance, he pops his claws and takes the life of Professor Charles Xavier. But since this is Professor X we're talking about, there's a little bit of a slight twist here. What unfolded was that Wolverine, using his big-ass nose, had knowingly killed a shape-shifting war scroll that had taken the form of Professor X in a plot against the Shi'ar Empire. And then a few issues later here, in the Uncanny X-Men 280, Xavier and S.H.I.E.L.D. are on Earth, searching the ruins of Mirror Island and finding members of the X-Men and X-Factor who are held captive by Xavier's son, Legion. Man, why there always gotta be some family drama? Either way, Legion had been made the new host of the Shadow King. After they freed them from Legion's captivity, Xavier prepares to wage battle against the Shadow King on the astral plane. Now, during this, Jean, Storm, Cyclops, and others attempt to shield his body from physical attacks, but things did not take place as they expected them to. With Xavier losing the battle, the injuries that are sustained on the astral plane start to manifest themselves in the physical world. What happens next is that minor injuries begin to appear all over his body, and soon his legs are broken. As the battle comes to a close, Legion is seen unconscious collapse and Xavier seems barely alive. Though Xavier manages to win, he has to pay a tremendous cost. Once again, Professor X slips away from death, but there's more to it. His spine gets shattered and he is once again partially paralyzed. And in this next one, we're going back a little bit here, back to Uncanny X-Men issue number 42. Now, this issue had declared that it would depict the death of Professor X. Charles Xavier perished as he attempted to save the world from a vengeful being known as Grotesque. Now, Grotesque is the last survivor of a subterranean race, and the radiation from underground nuclear tests annihilated his people, so that unleashed this boy for blood. During his final moments, Xavier tells the X-Men that he was already dying before he was mortally wounded. But in issue number 65, it was then revealed that the man who actually died was not Professor X. It was actually Changeling, aka Kevin Sidney, aka Morph, who was a reformed villain who had previously faced the X-Men. Now, Changeling dying and actually taking the form of Charles Xavier was quite a necessary deception to prevent an alien invasion on Earth. All right, and you guys know that this would not be a good list here if we did not talk about Jean Grey. So as we move away from the comics, we find ourselves in 2006 in the 20th century Fox film named X-Men: The Last Stand. And I know what some of you guys are already thinking, why the hell do we have to go back to remembering that movie? But in the movie, Xavier finds himself alongside death yet again. When a cure is found that can reverse the effects of the genetic mutation that provides mutants with superhuman abilities, there's obviously going to be some outrage here in the mutant community, right? So while some mutants such as Rogue, if we could even call her that, because let's be real, I'm still convinced that she got to be some kind of variant because that's just not our Rogue. But either way, some mutants find promise in this cure. Another group states their view that mutations aren't a disease to be cured. The stage for battle arises between Magneto and his followers on one side and Professor X and his followers on the other side. Now, Jean Grey eventually sides with Magneto, kinda, but before that, Xavier confronts her in her childhood home. Jean snaps Xavier's body out of existence. Sorry, wrong movie, but you get the point. Either way, she explodes him into several bits and casts this man off into the air with her cosmic powers from the Phoenix, and like one of the most savage ways too. All right, and in this next one, we're calling it the classic bullet, because in X-Men issue number 2007 here, Professor X faces his long time, once again, friend, death. This time, it's more of an old school way of dying. Yup, the classic bullet. Charles Xavier takes a bullet to the head, but the fact is that he wasn't the intended target when Bishop squeezed the trigger. Bishop was aiming at Cable, who was at the time teleporting away as he pulled the trigger. It was Xavier standing behind Cable who had to face the shot. Cyclops, Beast, and the other X-Men gather around their mentor's body. Wolverine reveals that Professor X sustained a headshot and that their mentor isn't breathing. So Beast clears the way so that he can access Charles Xavier himself. But just a few moments later, this dude just exclaims, "Oh no, oh Charles," which honestly was just sad. And then in this last one, we call it Legion Onto the Past. So you guys already know well already, Legion is Professor Xavier's son. So in X-Men issue number 41 here, Legion transports himself into Xavier's past, seeking to assassinate Magneto before he has a chance to turn on Xavier. This gives rise to an epic battle, but the issue is that Legion is just way too powerful. Xavier and the X-Men find a way to slow down Legion's attack, which honestly proves to be of no use because he quickly regains the upper hand and resumes his attack on Magneto. As Legion unleashes a telekinetic attack on Magneto, Xavier comes to the rescue by jumping in front of him and absorbing the blow. This was a moment which opened up Magneto's eyes, as he could not even imagine the fact that Xavier would sacrifice himself to protect his former enemy, even though they had grown closer during that time. But it also shocked Legion, who then in return fled the scene. And then in the end, Magneto was just sitting there cradling Xavier's lifeless body. But since this is Professor X, the man, of course, will live again, as you have already seen, because guess what? He always lives again. He will, of course, though, once again, meet death. As you see, Professor X is a person who's confronted death several times, man. Let's just say that this dude at this point is just used to it. So which one of these deaths of Professor X did you find the most interesting and why? Let us know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that we can continue to produce videos just like this. Check out this next video here on our channel. And as always, thank you so much for kicking in with Keepin' It Comic. Bye.